The Tupolev Tu-160, known by NATO as Blackjack, was conceived in the 1970s as a strategic response to the American B-1 Lancer. It was intended to serve as the backbone of the Soviet Union's long-range bomber force, capable of delivering nuclear and conventional cruise missiles over intercontinental distances. Designed during the height of the Cold War, the aircraft was optimized for deep penetration missions using high speed and altitude as its main forms of defense. However, since its first flight in 1981, the world and warfare have changed dramatically, and the aircraft has increasingly shown its limitations. Despite modernization efforts, the Tu-160 remains a deeply flawed and expensive platform that presents numerous disadvantages for Russia. From a technical standpoint, the Tu-160's design is rooted in 1970s-era technology. Even modernized versions Tu-160M and Tu-160M2 are fundamentally constrained by the original airframe architecture. The variable sweep wing mechanism, while allowing for good performance at both subsonic and supersonic speeds, introduces a level of mechanical complexity that makes maintenance more difficult and time-consuming. This complexity leads to a high failure rate in hydraulic and control systems. The aircraft's avionics and cockpit instrumentation, although partially digitized in newer versions, are still based on legacy Soviet systems. Many of the upgrades are superficial or modular, meaning the aircraft has digital components bolted onto analog infrastructure. This creates integration problems, increases the risk of system incompatibility, and results in higher maintenance burdens. The Tu-160's engines, 4 massive Kuznetsov NK-32 afterburning turbofans, are among the most powerful ever fitted to a combat aircraft, but they are highly inefficient. The engines consume enormous amounts of fuel, reducing the practical range without aerial refueling. They also generate extreme heat signatures and require constant maintenance due to wear and tear. Rebuilding or producing new NK-32 engines has proven to be a daunting challenge for modern Russian industry. Since the collapse of the Soviet Union, many of the factories and suppliers that once produced parts for these engines have ceased to exist, and skilled labor has been lost. Russian authorities have attempted to restart NK-32 production under a Series 2 project, but results have been inconsistent. Quality control issues, component shortages, and bureaucratic delays continue to plague engine production. As a result, the modernization schedule for the Tu-160M fleet has fallen years behind target, with only a few aircraft actually delivered in usable condition. There have also been several real-world incidents that underscore the aircraft's vulnerability and operational fragility. In 2003, a Tu-160 crashed during a training flight in the Murmansk region, killing the crew. The cause was later attributed to engine failure, but the official investigation revealed systemic issues with aircraft maintenance and parts supply. In 2019, a Tu-160 undergoing refitting at the Kazan Aircraft Production Association (KAPO) caught fire during a ground test. Though no crew were aboard, the airframe was severely damaged. This incident illustrated the hazards involved in retrofitting decades-old aircraft with new equipment. Other Tu-160s have experienced emergency landings, engine shutdowns in flight, and avionics failures. Each incident highlights a persistent theme: the aircraft, despite its formidable appearance, is not particularly robust or reliable in real-world conditions. Strategically, the Tu-160 also suffers from inflexibility. It is not a multi-role aircraft. It was designed for a narrow mission profile, high-speed, high-altitude missile delivery against fixed targets, primarily in North America. This concept was valid in the Cold War, but today's battlefield demands more adaptability. The Tu-160 cannot be easily repurposed for tactical bombing, electronic warfare, or close air support. Its massive size, loud engines, and inability to operate from small or dispersed airbases further restrict its usefulness. It is a strategic weapon with limited day-to-day utility. In modern conflicts like the war in Ukraine, the Tu-160 can launch long-range cruise missiles from deep inside Russian airspace, but this is a function that could be performed more efficiently and cheaply by mobile ground systems or other aircraft such as the Tu-95 Mega Siemens or even newer platforms. In terms of deployment, the Tu-160 is based at a few highly visible and strategically vulnerable airbases, such as Engels Air Base. These locations have been repeatedly targeted by Ukrainian drone and sabotage attacks in recent years. In late 2022 and again in 2023, drone strikes reached Engels, damaging several aircraft and exposing how easily Russia's most valuable strategic bombers could be hit on the ground. Tu-160s, due to their sheer size, cannot be easily moved or hidden. Their basing requirements, long, reinforced runways and extensive ground infrastructure, make them ideal targets. Even a relatively small number of accurate attacks could cripple the fleet's operational readiness. Russia has few alternative airfields with the facilities to support Tu-160 operations, and there is no meaningful redundancy in place. Fuel logistics present another challenge. The Tu-160 relies on specialized aviation fuel types and consumes massive quantities. Maintaining a constant supply chain for missions is difficult in times of war, especially when rail lines, depots, or refineries are vulnerable to attack or sanctions. The aircraft's range without aerial refueling is good, but not limitless. Russia's aerial refueling capability is modest, with a small and aging fleet of tankers. This creates additional planning burdens and limits flexibility in a sustained combat scenario. If refueling support is lost or tankers are destroyed, the Tu-160s become significantly less effective. From a production standpoint, the decision to resume building Tu-160s, under the Tu-160M2 label, has also proven problematic. These are not truly new aircraft but are often reconstructed from stored Soviet-era airframes or incomplete fuselages. The production tools, jigs, and technical documentation from the 1980s are in many cases missing, damaged, or obsolete. Russian engineers have faced serious difficulties in recreating components that were originally designed and built in the Soviet military-industrial complex, often with the help of Ukrainian factories. These production challenges lead to massive delays, cost overruns, and questionable quality assurance. The cost of building or modernizing each aircraft runs into the hundreds of millions of dollars, a heavy burden for a country dealing with economic sanctions, inflation, and war-related spending. Finally, from a strategic viewpoint, the Tu-160 is increasingly seen as a relic of the past. Its primary value today is symbolic. It projects an image of Russian military power and is used in propaganda to showcase strategic reach. However, its actual utility is limited. It cannot penetrate modern Western air defenses in a high-threat environment. It is not stealthy, not survivable against modern fighters, and not versatile enough to serve in varied roles. Its presence in the Russian Air Force is a reflection of technological inertia, the inability to field a better platform. The PAK-DA, a planned stealth bomber intended to replace the Tu-160, is still under development and has been delayed repeatedly. In the meantime, Russia is left relying on a bomber that was designed for a very different kind of war, in a very different time. While the Tu-160 remains visually impressive and technically capable in certain areas, it suffers from an accumulation of disadvantages that make it a poor fit for modern strategic needs. These include aging airframes, complex and fragile systems, costly and inefficient operations, limited flexibility, supply chain vulnerabilities, insufficient numbers, susceptibility to attack, and heavy dependence on an outdated industrial base. Its continued use is a stopgap, not a strength, a reflection of both the Soviet legacy and the modern Russian military's struggle to build something truly new.